You've been there. You trusted someone, but somehow being around them made you feel small, like you were always doing something wrong, like you had to explain yourself all the time. You felt drained after seeing them, not because they yelled, not because they fought you, but because they smiled while making you doubt yourself. They confused you, twisted your words, made you feel like you were the problem, and yet they called themselves your friend, your partner, your support. Evil doesn't always show up angry. Sometimes it's polite, charming, soft-spoken, but the effect is the same. Your peace fades, your confidence shrinks, your freedom disappears. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Guard the citadel of your mind," because when someone controls how you think, they don't need to raise their voice. They already own you. So how do you spot someone like that? How do you know when a person is quietly hurting you? Let's look at the first sign. Once you see it, you'll never ignore it again. Not all evil is loud. Some of it looks helpful, polite, supportive. That's why it's so dangerous. Because it doesn't feel wrong. At least, not at first. Some of the most manipulative people don't raise their voice. They raise your doubts. They don't push you down. They lift you just enough to make sure you fall back into their hands. This is the kind of manipulation that hides behind kindness. It looks like guidance. It sounds like support. But the goal isn't to help you grow. It's to make sure you never grow without them. It usually starts small. They compliment you. They encourage you. They tell others how talented you are. And you trust them because they see your potential. But then, something shifts. The same person who lifted you up starts pointing out tiny flaws. They frame it as constructive criticism. They say they're just being honest, but the timing is off. The tone is calculated. They correct you more than they praise you. They make suggestions that feel more like commands. They ask questions that sound helpful, but somehow always leave you feeling a little less. And here's the key. You start needing their opinion. You wait for their feedback. You hesitate to make decisions without their input. That's the trap. That's the loop. It's not a mentorship. It's a quiet form of ownership. They've convinced you that your value comes from their validation. And without realizing it, you start seeing yourself through their eyes, not your own. This is a psychological control pattern, and it's often mistaken for care. But true care makes you stronger. True help teaches you to think on your own. Control, on the other hand, teaches you to doubt yourself and to depend on someone else to feel secure. As Epictetus warned, no man is free who is not master of himself. So ask yourself, does this person actually empower you? Or do they keep you in a space where you feel you're never quite enough, unless they say you are? If it's the second, you're not being guided. You're being managed. And the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it becomes to hear your own voice again. But when control through advice doesn't work, some use something even more dangerous: charm. And that's what we'll uncover next. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. Charm is the most seductive form of manipulation because it feels good, because you enjoy it, because your guard drops willingly. You don't question people who make you feel good. You lean into them. You want more. And that's the trap. Toxic people know this. They understand that manipulation doesn't always need to be forceful. It can be flattering. It can be fun. Charm gives them access to your trust, to your insecurities, to your emotional defenses. The more charming they are, the more likely you are to ignore your instincts. Because who questions someone who's always smiling, complimenting, encouraging? I had a friend like this. Always said the right thing. made people feel seen and special. He knew how to say exactly what you needed to hear, when you needed to hear it. But over time, I noticed something. His words were always perfect, but they never cost him anything. His kindness stopped the moment you weren't useful. And when no one was watching, his charm turned off like a switch. That's when I realized it wasn't kindness, it was strategy. People like this don't connect with you. They mirror you. They become whoever you want them to be until they get what they want, and then they vanish. Or worse, turn cold, dismissive, even cruel. This is the core problem with charm as control. It feels like care, but it functions like a cage. You end up craving their approval, chasing their attention, waiting for their praise to return. But it won't, because their affection was never real. It was performance. Charm without character is a mask, and the longer you believe it, the more it shapes you into someone they can control. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If their soul is rooted in control, their charm is only the paint, not the truth. So watch for the cracks in the performance. How do they treat people who can't benefit them? How do they act when no one's watching? Because real goodness doesn't need to be charming. It just is. And if charm doesn't keep you close, they'll reach for something darker, not flattery, but distortion. They'll start to bend the truth itself. There's a different kind of confusion, the kind you feel when someone lies to you so confidently that you start to wonder if maybe you're the one who's wrong. You double-check your memory. You replay the conversation. You even feel guilty for questioning them. That's not miscommunication. That's manipulation by design. Because when someone lies with intention, with poise, with no hesitation, they're not trying to cover up a mistake. They're trying to reshape your reality. I had a colleague like that. Smart, well-spoken, respected. She claimed to have led an entire project, took full credit in meetings, presented the results like it was her solo success, even shared the story publicly. But I was there. I did most of the back-end work, and I had the receipts, emails, planning docs, even messages with our manager. So I brought it up. And her response? Calm, smiling. You're probably remembering it wrong, but either way, it was a team effort, right? Just like that. She planted doubt. She didn't defend herself. She made me question my own version of the truth. That's not a random lie. That's a strategic psychological move. Because when they can get you to second-guess yourself, they don't have to prove anything. You'll do the erasing for them. These people lie for influence, not escape. Their lies aren't born out of panic. They're built to manipulate your perception of reality. And here's what makes it even worse. Lies are exhausting to maintain. They're like spinning plates. The more you create, the more you have to protect. One crack, and the whole thing collapses. That's why liars have to keep talking, keep adding details, keep rewriting the past to protect the illusion they built. But the truth? It stands on its own. It doesn't require decoration or defense. Stoic philosophy teaches us, don't argue with words, observe behavior. Because actions reveal what words try to hide. So if someone's words shift, depending on who's in the room, if their version of events keeps evolving, if their stories always put them in the best light, don't excuse it. Don't rationalize it. Recognize it. That's not forgetfulness. That's design. And the longer you stay close to someone like that, the harder it becomes to trust your own thoughts. The goal of their lie isn't to convince others. It's to confuse you so you stop trusting yourself. They don't fear truth. They fear exposure. And that's why they bury it in layers of performance. Because to them, Truth is just one version of the story, and they believe their version is the one that wins. But there's something even colder than a liar. It's someone who doesn't care how their lies hurt you, because they feel nothing at all. Pain has a way of revealing people. Not your pain, but their reaction to it. When you're at your lowest, pay attention to who stays silent, who looks away, who turns the moment into something about them. That's how you spot someone without empathy, not in how they treat you when things are good, but in how they respond when your world is falling apart. It's one of the clearest signs of a dangerous person, and one of the most overlooked, because we don't expect empathy to be perfect, but we do expect it to exist, at least a little. But some people simply don't feel it, not because they're unaware, but because they don't care. I've seen this firsthand. You sit across from someone, open up about something real, a loss, a fear, a failure, and all they offer is a blank stare, or worse. Yeah, well, everyone goes through stuff. They dismiss it, minimize it, change the subject. They don't want to feel what you feel. They don't want to carry anything that doesn't benefit them. This isn't just a cold moment. It's a cold pattern, and it reveals more than a lack of tact. It reveals a lack of humanity. There are 3 common forms of this. 1. Dismissive coldness. They shut you down, make you feel dramatic, oversensitive, or weak for having emotions. 2. Performative empathy. They say all the right things, but their tone is flat. Their body language is checked out. It's all for show. 3. Strategic indifference. This one's the most dangerous. They deliberately ignore your pain because it gives them power. The less they respond, the more you chase their approval. They train you to feel that your emotions are unimportant, so you stop expressing them. Over time, you internalize the message, I should just deal with it alone. And that's exactly where they want you, isolated, emotionally starved, and easier to control. As Seneca said, we are born for cooperation. To live for ourselves is to die alone. Oh, people without empathy don't just lack connection, they drain connection from others. They take your openness and turn it into a liability. So here's the hard truth. Someone who can't feel your pain will never protect you from it, and eventually they'll become the one who causes it. That's the true danger of empathy voids. They don't react because they don't register you as real, only as useful or not. You are either a tool or a burden. And the moment your feelings don't serve them, they'll turn cold, cruel, distant. Real empathy doesn't need to be eloquent. It needs to be present. It's in the follow-up, the tone, the stillness when you speak. And when it's missing, that's your sign to step back, before your emotions become another game for them to ignore. Because once they see that your pain can't protect you, they'll try to control what you believe, what you decide, and eventually, what you think. Control doesn't always look like someone barking orders. It can look like concern, advice, a soft suggestion at the right time. But what starts as support slowly turns into mental invasion. At first, they offer guidance. You're unsure about something, and they step in to help. It feels thoughtful, even comforting. Then they start planting doubts. Are you sure that's the right move? I just don't want you to get hurt. I've been through this before, trust me. And soon, you're second-guessing yourself, waiting for their opinion before making decisions, feeling like you need their approval just to breathe easy. That's not support. That's control. Because when someone guides you away from your own instincts, you stop trusting your judgment. And when you don't trust yourself, you become dependent. I had someone like this in my life. At first, Their advice seemed helpful, practical even. But over time, I realized something strange. Every time I had a new idea, they raised doubts. Every time I wanted to grow, they reminded me of past failures. And every time I tried to step out on my own, they called it risky, impulsive, or unwise. Eventually, I stopped moving, not because I was incapable, but because I was conditioned to doubt myself. That's how mind control works. Not with force, but with slow erosion. They don't need to tie you down. They just need to convince you that you can't move without them. This tactic is dangerous because it disguises itself as looking out for you. But the goal isn't your growth. It's your dependence. They don't want you to fall. They want you to stay small, predictable, dependent, safe under their rule. And once they gain access to your mental space, they shape your beliefs, your decisions, your identity. You start asking for permission in places you used to walk freely. But Stoic philosophy teaches us freedom is the only worthy goal in life. Epictetus. And that freedom begins in your mind. So ask yourself, do I feel smaller after talking to this person? Do I need their approval to feel confident? Do I hesitate to make choices without their input? If the answer is yes, you're not being mentored, you're being managed. And if you don't take your mind back, you'll soon forget it was ever yours. Control isn't always physical. Sometimes it's emotional. And the most dangerous kind is when they make you think it was your choice. But if control isn't enough, they'll make sure you also carry the blame, even when none of it was yours to begin with. It always starts the same way. Something goes wrong, a plan fails, a conversation turns cold, and somehow it's your fault. Even when it wasn't, even when you were just trying to help, even when you weren't even there when it happened. But they're calm, convincing. They say it just right. I'm not blaming you, but you did kind of set the tone. I just wish you'd handled it differently. I had to step in because you dropped the ball. Suddenly, you're defending yourself, explaining, apologizing, not for what you did, but for how they made it look. That's not miscommunication. That's blame deflection, a tactic used by those who refuse to take responsibility. Because if you're always the one fixing, apologizing, taking the emotional weight, they stay clean, untouched, in control. I once worked on a project where things started falling apart. Deadlines were missed, tasks dropped, and without warning, my teammate pulled the manager aside and said, "I've done everything I could, but she hasn't been very organized." It hit like a punch to the stomach. I'd been carrying the bulk of the load, but he made sure to spin the story, softly, respectfully, just enough to shift the spotlight away from himself. And it worked. For a while, I even questioned myself. Maybe I should have sent more updates. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. That's the power of strategic blame. It doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. This is not just manipulation, it's psychological weight shifting. And the more you carry that weight, the more you bend. Over time, you become the one who always overreacts, who always needs to apologize, who always creates the tension, even when all you did was speak the truth. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I'll gladly change, for it is the truth I seek." That's how the wise handle mistakes. But manipulators? They don't seek truth. They seek optics. They don't fix problems. They fix blaming on you. So how do you know it's happening? You feel like you're walking on eggshells. You second-guess your memory. You apologize more than they ever do. When someone always comes out clean, and you always come out questioning yourself, that's not fairness. That's a setup. A strong person owns their part. A manipulator rewrites the story so you wear the guilt. But what if they go even further? What if they don't just blame you, but actually enjoy watching you fall? There's a moment that stays with you, a moment when you were struggling, and they smiled. Maybe it was subtle, a smirk, a sarcastic joke, a comment that felt harmless on the surface. But underneath, you felt it. They weren't surprised by your pain. They weren't confused by it. They enjoyed it. That's not coldness. That's cruelty. And it's one of the darkest signs of a dangerous person. They find satisfaction in watching others suffer, not necessarily through violence. Sometimes it's emotional, subtle, elegant, like laughing when someone's embarrassed, mocking someone's failure behind their back, or smirking when you're crying just enough for you to wonder if you imagined it. That's not a slip. That's design. I knew someone like this. When a co-worker got publicly criticized by our manager, everyone else looked away. Uncomfortable, but she leaned in, smiled slightly, and whispered, "He had it coming." At first, I thought it was just commentary. Later, I realized she'd been waiting for it. She enjoyed it, because the more others fell, the better she felt about herself. That's emotional sadism. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet pleasure taken from someone else's breakdown. And people like this don't just enjoy watching you fall. They sometimes push you toward the edge just to watch it happen. They ask triggering questions. They provoke emotional responses. Then they sit back and call you too sensitive. It's control through chaos. And your pain? It's their proof that they have the upper hand. Stoic philosophy is clear on this. No man is more unhappy than one who never faces adversity, said Seneca. But for these people, adversity isn't a test, it's entertainment. They don't grow from your struggle, they feed off it. That's why your pain lingers longer when they're around, because they won't soothe it, they'll stretch it. A healthy person will ask, "Are you okay?" A toxic person will watch, wait, and whisper, "Told you so." So if you notice that your pain always feels heavier around them, if they seem energized by your setbacks, if their eyes light up when you shrink, that's not just indifference, it's pleasure. And a person who takes pleasure in your suffering won't hesitate to repeat the pattern again and again, as long as it keeps them feeling powerful. And when pain isn't enough, they'll go deeper. They'll isolate you, not to protect you, but to control you completely. At first, it doesn't feel like control. It feels like care, like someone's finally protecting you, looking out for your best interest. Being loyal. They say things like, "Your friends don't really get you. Your family doesn't support you the way I do. You're just different." And people can't handle that live. And you believe them, because it sounds like love, but what it really is slow separation, one sentence at a time, one seed of doubt after another. Because the more your world shrinks, the more powerful they become inside it. This is isolation by design, not with commands, not with ultimatums, but with carefully crafted concerns. They don't say, "Cut them off." They just make you wonder, maybe I shouldn't share that anymore. Maybe they don't really understand me. Maybe it's safer to keep things between just us. And slowly, you stop reaching out. You stop texting first. You stop opening up to the people who once made you feel seen. Until one day, you look around and they're all gone. Not because they left you, but because you pulled away first, under someone else's influence. I remember when I realized this in my own life. There was someone close to me, always gentle, always polite, never said anything openly cruel, but they had a gift for planting doubt, Don't you think she talks over you too much? Your brother. He never really listens, does he? Small comments. Nothing aggressive. But over time, they stained my view of the people I loved. And here's the haunting part. I thought I was seeing the truth. I thought I was waking up. But I wasn't waking up. I was being reprogrammed. That's how emotional captivity begins. Not with chains, but with whispers. Because when you're alone, when you've been quietly cut off from the voices that kept you grounded, you're easier to mold, easier to shape, easier to own. You stop hearing outside truth. You start hearing only their version. And when that happens, you no longer know where your thoughts end and theirs begin. Marcus Aurelius warned us, we are made for cooperation, not isolation. True connection expands you. False protection confines you. So ask yourself, do you feel more disconnected from people you once trusted? Do you second-guess your relationships now? Do you explain others' flaws using only this one person's perspective? If yes, you're not being protected. You're being caged. Because the more isolated you are, the more you rely on the cage for comfort. And the more you rely on it, the less you believe you can ever leave. Real love doesn't divide you. It connects you deeper. It never asks you to shrink your world just to feel safe. And once they've clipped your ties to everyone else, they'll turn to the next target, your confidence, not by attacking it directly, but by dressing envy as advice. Not all compliments are real. Some are weapons, wrapped in pretty words. And you feel it. You achieve something you're proud of. You finally win, get recognized, grow. And then they say, that's great, but don't let it get to your head. Nice job, but next time, try to push a little harder. I'm happy for you, but I heard someone else did it even better. And just like that, your joy dims, your confidence cracks, your momentum stalls. That's not praise. That's strategic insecurity. It's envy wearing the mask of encouragement. I once completed a major project I had poured my heart into. Late nights, no shortcuts. The result? Solid. And when I shared it, a friend smiled and said, "Good job. I mean, it's not groundbreaking, but definitely solid for where you're at." It wasn't harsh. It wasn't rude, but it landed like a punch. And that's the brilliance of poisoned praise. You don't even realize you've been cut until you feel yourself bleeding confidence later. These people can't celebrate you because your light threatens their shadows. Your progress reminds them of their stagnation. Your success feels like a mirror reflecting everything they haven't done. So what do? They congratulate you, but with limitations. They affirm you, then shrink you with subtle comparisons. They support you, but only in ways that keep you below them. This is envy in disguise, and it's one of the most common emotional control tactics out there, because if they can make you doubt your wins, they keep you needing their approval. If they can remind you of your flaws right after your success, you stay small enough not to intimidate them. True encouragement lift, false praise encore. So how do you tell the difference? Do you feel better or worse after their compliments? Do you feel seen or subtly shamed? Do you start questioning your own worth after being around them? That's the test. A truly kind person will celebrate your growth without agenda. They'll push you to rise without pulling you down in the same breath. They'll make you feel stronger, not smaller. Stoic wisdom reminds us, don't let the opinion of others color your self-worth. Measure it by your own principles. So if their praise makes you doubt your shine, it wasn't praise, it was a leash. And if they can't shrink you with envy, they'll simply stop pretending. Because the final sign is the most dangerous of all. They feel no guilt because they've silenced their conscience completely. You've tried. You've explained how they hurt you. You chose your words carefully. You stayed calm. You gave them the chance to make it right. And what did they do? They deflected, justified, blamed the situation, blamed you. I'm sorry you feel that way. Everyone makes mistakes. It wasn't that serious. But never once. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Because they don't say that. Not ever. Not to you. Not to anyone. And that's not forgetfulness. That's not stubbornness. That's moral deadness. You see, most people make mistakes. We all do. But emotionally healthy people reflect. They feel the weight of their actions. They may not be perfect, but they try to make it right. These people, they don't change because they never believe they're wrong. And if they do something that hurts you, they'll either minimize it or justify it, or point to what you did last year, as if that erases everything. This isn't about conflict resolution. It's about refusing responsibility as a way of life. Because to admit they're wrong would mean letting go of control, letting go of the image, facing themselves. And for them, that's too much. So instead, they build a personality around never apologizing, never bending, never reflecting. They rewrite stories to fit their ego. They gaslight your memory. They mock the idea of growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." But they don't waste time on that, because they've convinced themselves they already are. And if someone never admits they're wrong, never takes a moment to reflect, never tries to repair what they've broken, then they're not growing, they're calcifying. And you can't build anything meaningful with a person who refuses to evolve. You'll just keep walking in emotional circles while they stand still, arms crossed, blaming you for the spin. Self-reflection is the engine of transformation. Without it, people don't just become stuck, they become dangerous. Because a person who feels no guilt has no breaks, no lines, no pause between impulse and action. So if you're waiting for them to apologize, to reflect, to finally say, "I was wrong," stop waiting. They've already made their choice. Now it's time to make yours. Because once you recognize all 10 signs, you'll realize something powerful. You were never the problem. You were just too close to someone who refused to be honest, even with themselves. You've seen the signs, the quiet manipulation, the charming lies, the blame games, the cold indifference, the subtle control, the poisoned praise, the pleasure in your pain, the way they isolate you, make you question yourself, make you smaller, and finally, how they never reflect, never change, never say sorry. Let that sink in. Evil doesn't always scream. It whispers, it flatters, it plays the long game. But now you know what it looks like. And once you see it, you don't unsee it. You start noticing who drains you, who chips away at your confidence, who keeps you close just to keep you controlled. So what do? You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't try to fix someone who chooses not to feel. You detack. You reclaim your peace. And you walk quietly, powerfully, without apology, because your peace is not up for negotiation, because your mind is a fortress. And not everyone deserves access. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Protect those thoughts. Protect that peace, not with anger, but with clarity. And if you're still here, still listening, then deep down, you already know what you need to do. Now, Do this right now. Block the number, cut the tie, leave the chat unread. Stop giving them emotional access. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, because the longer you hesitate, the deeper the hook stays in, and the deeper it is, the harder it becomes to pull out without bleeding. You've seen the signs. Now it's time to respect them, not with a whisper, but with a decision. If this video helped you see more clearly, comment, "I see the signs." Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more tools to build your inner strength. The Stoic way, the cold way, the free way.